Welcome to MxM Live. Over the last 5 odd years, I would have done 100 odd stories on television audience measurement. And central to all of them was Partho Dasgupta, former CEO of BARC India. Partho joined BARC in June 2013, and in November last year, he handed over operations to his friend and former colleague Sunil Lulla. He is now using his experience and learnings to various other places in the world, setting up BARC-like entities as an expert. He's also consulting broadcast and new media companies as a management consultant. He, of course, continues to be president of the Ad Club in India. So without further ado, let's speak with Partho Dasgupta. Welcome to MxM Live, Partho, and congratulations on BARC completing 5 years of operations.
Thank you for having me, Pradyuman. I mean, it's a pleasure. And yes, it's a big achievement. I mean, for BARC to finish 5 years, it's not easy. And my congratulations to the team who's there, who have done a tremendous job all these 5 years, actually.
This is possibly your first video interview after you deserted us.
Deserted? No. I was very much around. I was of course. I mean, yes. Yes, this is the first television or video interview.
So let me ask you in a filmy style. Yaad hai wo din 5 years back?
Zarur. Actually, you know, there was another landmark day. If you remember, it was 5th of April. Where we first previewed all the results of the new system to 500, roughly about 500 people.
In the airport center, Sahara
Star, that big one, big.
Shock and awe, if I remember right.
That's right. Where we ensured that journalists are not allowed. You remember we had a chat on this, that we were making people sign NDAs to get into have this preview, and we were actually showing.
There's something called WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, that also happens, which we know very, very well by now how things leak. So I think that was a big landmark day, but on 29th we made things commercially available. So of course it's a big day. It was a big day. I still remember, and lots of things happened before it, of course, and we actually first started seeing data December of 2014, right? I still remember, and I had a Facebook post on this those days where I actually showed. Obviously, I didn't mask the channel names and exact numbers, but that was the first time we got to see some data out of the system. And then week after week, we got into the drill, basically, of seeing the data and what it means and all that. And first time we showed people was 5th of April, and then on 25th, we made it public.
Let me just recap. You know, BARC was incorporated in 2010. Yeah. You joined in June 2013, and it took you almost 2 years.
I would say 20 months, which is by any global standards, very fast. Yeah. Typically, if you go, and in fact, during my whole homework that we were doing, we went to a lot of places, and what we heard was a panel size of about 4,000 to 5,000. Takes about 3 to 4 years at least to set up. So for us, the 20,000 thing that we started with, it was very fast in my view.
And it was almost an industrial operation, right? You had,
it's a process.
The largest system in the world. You had to look at, procuring stuff from across the world. So tell me, were there moments when you thought possibly it wouldn't happen? There were just too many odds?
Many. I think I will give you 2 of them so that you get a flavor. And I wish Sashish sir would have been here, because he has as many stories like me. So I think it was I think we floated a global tender in June 2013. So by the time all the bids were here and all that, it was September, if I'm not mistaken, September or October of 2013. And when we opened the bids and called, and these were all global majors who were actually bidding, we realized that it was complete cartelization, where 2 big global giants were bidding with complete knowledge of each other's bids, and the numbers were very, very, very high. So India couldn't afford anything like this by any stretch of imagination. And the fact that we had to scale it up to 50K and all that. So we tried very hard negotiation. We tried to give them a big thing but we realized that at the end of the day, they would compare notes and the bids would come out roughly the same. So we tried to again get into a thing where north and east would be different and west and south would be different, and to give it to these two, but still the prices wouldn't come down. So and there was an incident where Sashi sir was abroad, and he came across, and he was meeting one of these big global players, and somebody actually made a comment that Indians won't be able to do it. I think when Sashi sir told us that, I think it is something that really hit us very, very hard. And
if I remember right, that was a turning point, right? When you all said, listen, man, whatever it is, karke dikhate hain.
So in fact, I was in London and I was being told this, and then Sashi sir was saying, "Abhi kya kare?" Because both these guys are effectively saying, "We won't do it unless you give this kind of price, and a price that we can't afford by margin," that kind of a thing. So I was in London, so I had a thing that one of the bits, there was this company from France, which is Mediametry now, who said that we will not be able to manufacture meters or anything, but we can give you the blueprint of what to do, just the meter backend software part. And I said, let me try. So I still remember it was a Wednesday evening when I was having this conversation with Sashi sir and in London, and I called this gentleman, which is Wilhelm. You all know him. So we called him to say that, took a chance that would you be able, because I didn't have a French visa. So would you be able to drop by, because I am in London. So for them, it's a 2-hour train journey. So Willem dropped by on Thursday morning. We had some 2-3 hours of meeting, and then we decided that we will visit France. So Sashi sir and a couple of others, we all went to Paris, looked at their stuff, they spoke to their clients, and that's where it started. Actually, we found a solution. But before that, about 2 months, the period that I was talking about, we didn't know how to move forward, because these global giants would make us pay a very large amount, and they would not budge. So
as you look back, Partho, do you think it was tougher to set up the whole thing, or was it tougher to get your internal, your customers here within the country to agree to things and to trust you?
So there were two things, there were two phases. I think setting up is one big phase, a different kind of a challenge. Running it was another kind of a challenge. So there were two big things. In fact, just to complete that story, you said your heart stopped for some time. Yes, there was, even when we were going through the whole Mediametry thing, we were also talking to a big chip manufacturer globally to provide us the chip which goes into the meter. And so at some point we realized that Mediametry came up to here and the chip manufacturer came up to here. Nobody knew who will do this part, And we were going all over the place, spoke to integrators, this, that, nothing happened. So it's about 2 months. Puneet sir, Sashi and me, we knew what was happening. Obviously, we kept it dark from the rest of the industry, but 2 months, we never knew what was happening. Ultimately, a bunch of ex-IIT Bombay boys, they got together and they said, it's very easy, sir. So in fact, the guys who made this whole happen, and that's how it was. A couple of such occasions, we really didn't know where we will be, because we were starting from complete greenfield. We didn't have any ready solution. Nobody has assembled the solutions the way we had. So we couldn't copy any other country per se. So, and we had to be mindful of cost. So I think that was a big one. The second big one was funding. Funding was a very, very big one. I mean, you know how we funded it. It's a fully debt-funded company, obviously with guarantees from all the big patrons, so to speak. But I think funding was something very, very unique. It was an almost infinite debt-equity ratio, something that you wouldn't see very often. So if that funding wouldn't have got going, we would have not been where we were at any stage. And there were a couple of banks who agreed to that kind of situation, So it was, in my view, that was very, very unique, and that took us a lot to get that fructified, basically.
I know there have been some case studies done on the setting up of a BARC, but perhaps you should work on a book.
I'm not much of a writer. I'm not much of a right. One or two columns here and there are good. Many people have told me this, but let's see. Let's see. You don't know. Who knows?
You are kind of the operations of BARC when you took off. You were the name was appropriate, right? Because almost every week you had broadcasters barking, and you were BARC. So and not just broadcasters, you had the government too also making you have to take care of their ego and their guidelines. So how was it like initially, especially with broadcasters?
See, in fact, in the initial period, I would say it was slightly different. In fact, broadcasters got used to the system much more faster. Agencies took a lot of time, actually, at that point of time. If you remember, there was a lot of hue and cry about pre-post and all that stuff, right? So agencies to get used to the software, which was actually much more simpler, just because it's a new software, took a lot of time. Broadcasters also, I think, picked it up much faster. Of course, the usual thing of why my numbers have gone low and why is the other person's high is the usual thing, which happens everywhere. So
No, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the turning point for BARC, at least the way I saw it, was Puneet Goenka, who was chairman of BARC, and whose network, whose GC didn't perform very well in week one, and the fact that he took it, and he obviously privy to the results earlier. So the fact that he accepted the results was perhaps another turning point where if he could accept it, the whole world should be able to accept it.
He was not privy to the results. In fact, when we were showing the results first time, both Sashi sir and I were fairly apprehensive that how will he take it, because compared to, I think the last time numbers he was number 2, and this for us he was number 4. So which can be a shocking thing for any big network like Z. So yes, I think I think one should give credit to Puneet hugely, because to take it as on and say that no, that's fine. He actually told us, don't worry, if this is it, this is it. I mean, if the numbers are showing up like this, we will have to work harder at it. So that was amazing. We were very surprised and very pleasantly surprised, of course, but absolutely amazing.
I'm going to ask you a very sensitive question, and obviously, when I'm doing an interview, I would ask you at least one sensitive question. Tell me something. We all know about the problems. BARC, the BARC management was served a birthday gift in the form of recommendations by the TRAI. Do you, in retrospect, think that BARC and the industry gave in too easily to the government?
You mean in the initial days?
In the initial stage, for instance, in terms of setting up, towing the government line, and it's come to a point where it's now dictating, what it should be like.
So this started in the previous government, if you remember. This was during the Congress government, so to speak, pre-2014. I think it all started around 2012, if I remember it absolutely. 2012, 2013. So the first recommendations came. So this was, TRAI operates in a way where the government gives the recommendation, they have to come up with they refer them something, they have to come back to them with a recommendation. So it started that way. So it followed a process per se. See, personally, and we have discussed this many times, I think I find it unfair that TV rating is subjected to so much regulation versus not print or digital. But that's how it is. So,
you said it. The print guys hate me for always saying this. So for a change, you are saying it.
I'm candid, as you know very well.
Yeah, but because why should the government have a role? And for instance, even now you have one DTH operator. You have Kantar, which is still part owned by WPP, operating in that. So clearly, the government shouldn't be messing its hands in measurement.
So this is how it is. I don't want to get much into this part, Pradyuman. So this is what it is. I mean, it has been there since 2000.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. This is about reminiscing the past, and this is what the interview is all about. Your best moments, memories. If you were to pick up one moment that you'll always cherish. Apart, of course, from the fact that you set up the delivery from April 29th.
See, I think that December of 2014 that I talked to you, that when we first saw the numbers was a very eureka kind of moment. 29th of April, of course, was a big one. And then came October when we went full blown with rural data. I think it was 5th of October, if I'm not mistaken. I think the biggest, when I look back, I think the biggest thing was it's not about just these dates or these landmarks. It is more about, I think, the kind of people that I could assemble together and who worked like a team and was extremely committed. And see, all of us, none of us knew what was television ratings all about, very honestly, apart from the broad metrics and stuff like that. But how to do it, what goes within it, both the technology part, the measurement science part. I think, the satisfaction that you got after having put the whole thing together was amazing. I mean, measurement science, I would think that we didn't have enough talent there. And you have seen that from the beginning, we had a lot of expats whose help we took, who had guided us at different stages. Different stages require different kind of people. And I used to shop for it that the right talent should come into India to help us. In technology, we had very good brains, extremely good brains. And I think, did some amazing job. The meter that we developed and all that was tremendous, and the next phase of the meter and the backend software and all that. So I would think my happiest moments were all of this, that we got a bunch of tremendous people.
Oh, of course, a very good team.
Who delivered the stuff, actually. And the other big part, and I must say this now that I'm outside BARC, is what people don't realize, that it's a tough job. The guys out there are servicing you in this, like for example, even in this COVID situation, nothing is stopping. Data is coming out at 11 at every week. Just look at that. And nothing has stopped there from a delivery point of view. These guys take all the brickbats. They are never given any flowers or any cakes in their thing from the clients, but they continue with the same spirit. And that requires a huge amount of, HR engagement.
Absolutely.
Which Sunil will know. Sunil is obviously doing it right, and people out there, people like Romil and Mansi and all, they do a tremendous job in keeping that whole spirit going. I think, in my view, people is the biggest strength in BARC.
And any forgettable moment, the downers in the 6 years that you were there?
There are many. So
the top downer.
No, I can't be specific on this, to be honest, because there are very, very, very weird moments that one has to go through in this job. So something that you would not want to be typically. So the kind of calls that come and kind of, what should I say? I shouldn't call it names, but anyway, the kind of calls that comes. So, and the kind of things that are told to you are not too happy things.
So when you handed over the baton to Sunil, was it like a few, I must at this point of time ask the producer to show you two pictures over here. I've got this picture of yours, which is of 2013, around the time you joined, the communique that was sent to me. And the other picture down is of 2019. And, I can see the hairline, a lot of gray hair. You've lost a lot of hair. So obviously, the BARC experience did that.
I am sure. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you have spotted it right. Yeah, I can feel it, and everybody tells me so. Yeah, but to put it as starkly, 2013 and 2019. Yeah, of course. It has been like that. Yeah, you're right.
but you're looking quite, relaxed right now in your trademark tees, Partho.
Yes, I'm much more relaxed. As you said, you must have felt relieved. I definitely downed a couple of malts that evening, which was waiting to be opened. So yes, it's a very different feeling from what I was doing for the last running on the treadmill for so many years, and this kind of travel and the kind of sleeping 4 to 5 hours a day and 18-hour days kind of a things. Things are quite different now. I sleep 10 hours. So.
And do you sleep normally still on Thursdays? Do you still miss the Thursday excitement or the Thursday frenzy?
To be honest, Thursday frenzy used to be there for first 1 year. After that, it was not just Thursday typically, that people will, because they knew that we used to put out something called a heads up deck where all the typical Thursday questions would be answered in the heads up deck itself, which we started about 6 months down the line. So the questions would come sometime later, but many more thought through questions. On a Saturday, somebody would say, let's meet on Monday. So the whole team will work on a deck through the Saturday, Sunday, the measurement science and the market analytics teams and all that. So the nature of the pressures changed over time. But the first 1 year was a Thursday thing, basically.
It's interesting when I got to know that you are now taking the experience of setting up BARC to other countries. So could you tell us a little about it, whatever you can?
Yeah, so a couple of countries, I think the whole shift is talking about how they do not want to follow the good old method of outsourcing the whole thing to one or two companies, or one company. Typically, that's the way about 150 odd countries around the world operate. So few countries, after having seen the BARC model and the kind of costs that we operated in and the kind of the self-sufficiency that we operated in, so they have reached out to us to talk about it. And a couple of things, few of them were moving very, very fast. But COVID has been obviously, it has accelerated the process. But that's the broad structure. So they are talking on those terms, that how do we set up something like BARC.
So us meaning that you and a team of professionals have got together?
No, not right now. That I would do as and when things progress a bit more, because to be honest, this COVID thing has kind of delayed many of these conversations, because all these countries are hit as is India. So that would take some time.
I've always been wanting to ask you this. I know you have this crazy love for cars. Why did you decide to call the BARC software BMW? I know, of course, it is for measurement, and you use this as an acronym. So tell us why BMW.
So that's BARC India Media Workstation.
I know, but still.
But honestly speaking, it has nothing to do with my love for cars. Yes, I love cars, but the team decided. To be honest with you, the team decided. But I mean, it turned out to be.
You happy?
Yeah, I was happy. Those days I used to drive a BMW, so now I don't. So those days I used to.
I'm going to ask you one last question, Partho. It's been great speaking with you, but you know that running BARC is a thankless job, because you have all sorts of people who are gunning for you, and who point out stuff that is there, because their ratings are down. Any word of advice to people out there? I know you must have given that when you were logging out, but still, because once again they find themselves in a slightly peculiar position.
See, it is running the tiger. I mean, riding the tiger. Basically, very, very simple. You just can't get out of it. You can't get off it at the same time. You have to ride it once you're there. It's very, very difficult to even slow down or take a good holiday. I've not been able to take good holidays without phone calls disturbing me from all over the place for so many years. I think the only piece of advice, and I am sure the team there knows it very, very well, is be calm. There will be too many storms. Unless you are calm, you will not be able to weather it.
Thank you, Partho, and it was great speaking with you. And all the best for whatever you do. Take the BARC experience to wherever possible in the world, and keep the India flying high.
Thank you so much. Thanks for calling me. I mean, it's all reliving history, so to speak. So it's always a pleasure. But lots of miles ahead. So.
And write that book, Partho. You must write it.
We'll chat with you on this later.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.